Hey everyone, I'm reviewing this video by Anthony Chaffee. Chaffee? How do you say it? I don't know. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Let's see what he has to say.
This has been responsible for the death and disease of billions of people around the world over the past century. Billions. Almost everyone on earth is affected by this, by these terrible recommendations, these outright frauds and lies from these drug pushing assholes. People have gotten sick, they've gotten overweight, they've died early, they've died in disease and suffering, having dementia and Alzheimer's, and being enfeebled both mentally and physically. Cholesterol was never the problem. It was a scapegoat by the sugar companies. That's their words, not mine.
Coca-Cola funds 11 times more studies than NIH.
And so this was never the problem. We look at total cholesterol, then we're looking at LDL, then we're looking at
It's unrelated.
ratios, and we're looking at ApoB. It's just shifting the goalpost. It was never the damn problem in the first place. You go back and you look at the data that was available at the time. There was no association whatsoever between cholesterol or LDL and heart disease at all. None. And in fact, things like the Framingham study showed an inverse association between total cholesterol and.
Of course, cholesterol is an antioxidant in the human body. So the higher your cholesterol is, more antioxidants you have. So longer you're going to live.
Cardiovascular
That should be understood.
death and mortality, right? So the lower your total cholesterol, the more people died of heart attacks and strokes. So this was just misrepresented. This was the AHA, the American Heart Association, is a pack of lying somethings. And they have multiple times throughout the last century, in well-documented instances, been bought and paid for by the food industries, such as the sugar companies, or people on their boards or in charge of it.
Yes, exactly. What people don't understand is if you don't understand science, then you shouldn't trust science. You know? If you don't understand what these studies are actually about, if you don't actually look into them and see what the studies actually are, you just take someone's word for it, then you shouldn't be trusting science because you don't know science. You're just appealing to authority, which is always going to make you a slave, a stupid slave.
Being on the payroll of the sugar companies, the big food companies. Procter and Gamble bought Crisco from the Germans, who invented it as machine lubricant for tank gears.
Oh, yes, seed oils used to be for machine lubrication only. Now we eat them. People actually do that. They eat them. Eat machine lubricants.
I believe. And Procter and Gamble bought it and said, "Yeah, let's just feed it to these idiots." And they
It's so funny how he phrases it.
paid the American Heart Association $20 million
That's crazy.
to lie and say that it was better for your heart than animal fats like lard and butter, and say it was really good for your heart. It's much better than this stuff. Don't want that. You want Crisco, this clean, wonderful Crisco, this clean, beautiful machine oil lubricant.
It's really funny how he phrases it. He's like 100% right.
It's disgusting,
of course.
And this isn't
It is
conjecture.
disgusting.
This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's an historical fact. It's on the record. It's a matter of record.
What can you say? People just want to keep eating their seed oils.
So again, I'm I appreciate your doctor's concern, but that is just not what the evidence shows us. What the evidence shows us is that high LDL, low triglycerides means you're very metabolically healthy. You likely don't have metabolic syndrome. You're unlikely to have diabetes. And those are the major risk factors besides smoking and drinking.
The arguments with LDL being bad, it's just funny. Like, it's amusing. It's like an argument that a child would make.
For cardiovascular disease. And higher LDL is associated with longevity. Higher total cholesterol is associated with longevity. In studies
Yeah, the more cholesterol you have, the longer you're likely to live.
with 12 million people for LDL, and we just see more and more and more data showing that LDL and total cholesterol have absolutely nothing to do with development of heart disease. Um, there have been 3 studies that I've found that show these results, but one that I'll mention is the 2009 study out of UCLA where they looked at something like 134,000 people who've had a heart attack in, I believe it was just in America, and 73% had low or ideal LDL cholesterol, and about that many had low HDL as well. So HDL is much more predictive of getting a heart attack than LDL was. And of course, the conclusion of these authors were, oh, apparently our threshold for LDL isn't low enough. We need to lower it even more. And see, well, if you
It's
keep
so
lowering, and
funny.
this is actual guideline recommendations. If you keep lowering your LDL, but your patient keeps having heart attacks, you just keep lowering that LDL. There's no lower threshold. You can just get rid of LDL, just have zero of it. It's only poisonous. I mean, that's why our bodies make it, is because it's poison. It wants to kill us, and
It's so funny.
just have to fight nature in order to not die. I mean, how stupid you have to be to believe that we have an internal kill switch that is just killing us from the inside. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous statement for any doctor or biologist, serious biologist, to make. Um, and but that's the recommendation. It's just lower it, lower it, lower it, lower. Well, when are you going to figure out that if you keep lowering LDL and they keep having heart attacks, when are you going to figure out the LDL isn't the bloody problem there? Use your damn head.
Well,
And
they can't use their damn heads because if most likely the doctors are low in vitamin B12, and of course, in also every single other nutrient too, but especially B12 because it's related to the brain. They're not going to be able to think very clearly. They're going to be stupid.
but the problem is that people don't, because they're brainwashed. We've been absolutely indoctrinated.
And not only brainwashed, yes, brainwashed too, but also mentally disabled because of low vitamin B12 and of course other nutrients too.
For a long time, and that include, and I'm talking about doctors have been indoctrinated by the drug companies for a long time, and everyone else as a consequence of that indoctrination. So think about it this way: we've had genetically the same. So population genetics. If people study population genetics, you'll understand that if you have a percentage of alleles, genes in a population, regardless of how that population grows or shrinks, expands or shrinks, that you will have that same percentage of alleles in the population, unless there's some mass, genocide and die off, an extinction event, or a mass migration of people coming in. You'll keep that percentage. So right now, we have the same percentage of people that have familial hypercholesterolemia worldwide that we did in the 1800s. The first death from heart attack confirmed on autopsy in America was in 1912. There wasn't a single case throughout American history or the colonies before that. 1912 was the first one. I've been able to find exactly 8 case reports of people dying from a heart attack in all of Europe throughout the entire 18th century. I'm sure there are more, but if that were the most popular killer, we were eating more meat in the 1800s than we were in the early 1900s. because vegetarianism started getting pushed really hard in the 1800s because of the puritanical movement and the temperance movements, because they thought that the women especially shouldn't eat meat because it gives them carnal desires. You eat of the flesh, you'll think of the flesh, and no, can't have that.
That's what's there to say? What's there to say about that? You just have to be really just mentally incapable
That can't have
to
people
believe that.
reproducing and being healthy and
Oh,
fertile.
no,
Nope,
no,
nope,
no.
nope. We need to suppress that. And so the idea was, if you were a virtuous person, you would go vegetarian to suppress your sexual urges. In any experiment
That is correct. So going vegetarian or vegan would suppress your urges to reproduce because it would make you infertile. You wouldn't be able to make the correct hormones that would make you want to reproduce.
any model and any observation in nature, when
Or it just wouldn't get hard for guys.
animals stop being interested in mating and reproduction, they are sick. There is something
Obviously, like, obviously.
wrong. And that's what we're reproducing. That's where they were intentionally reproducing. And you see the meat consumption sort of going down throughout the 1800s, probably as a consequence of this sentiment that you needed to eat a vegetarian diet in order to suppress your sexual urges. That's certainly what the Seventh Day Adventists believe, and then they codified that in religious doctrine by saying God said it, and then that spread out from there. And now you have the consequences of that with Dr. Kellogg's and all the cereal companies that came up as a consequence of Dr. Kellogg's, and Sanitarium Foods. The Seventh Day Adventists like Sanitarium Foods, who are the major influencers of nutritional studies, dietetics, the curriculums, and the studies that are being put out. So I mean, this just goes crazy. But again, reading more meat in the 1800s, there's exactly 8 deaths from heart attacks in the literature. There's exactly 1 that I can find in the 1700s with the same exact.
What do these people think humans in nature eat? Like, think of 50,000 years ago. You're in nature, you're a caveman. You, you, you're gonna gather some broccoli? Have you, has anyone ever seen a broccoli in nature? It doesn't exist. It's, it's a cultivated vegetable. It's a plant, it's a flower. Has anyone seen potatoes in nature? They don't exist like that in nature. That's why we have to spray them with pesticides. They're not natural. They can't survive in nature. That's why they need human help, chemical stuff to keep them alive.
Percentage of people have familial hypercholesterolemia in the 1800s and 1700s and before as we do right now, when this is the number 1 killer in the world. So there's just LDL equals death. Why wasn't anyone dying then? And if you say, oh, well, we just didn't notice it, you're retarded, right? We saw 8 of them.
Whoa, he said it.
So people did know what to look for. Read a textbook from the medical textbook from the 1800s. They are insanely detailed. William Osler's textbook, my great-grandfather was a doctor, graduated from Columbia, as the youngest ever graduate from Columbia Medical School to date. He was 20 years old when he graduated Columbia Medical School, top of his class.
It's interesting. It seems like he comes from he has smart genes. He just looks smart too, like his head, his skull shape. He has his eyes. Like, you can tell if someone's smart or not from the skull and the eyes, especially the eyes, the eye area, and the skull size, of course. He seems to have a quite large skull, which means a bigger brain. And his eyes, they're very well developed.
He has
Like, he's got those hunter eyes. Of course, it's not what naturally should be. Like, they're set apart too far. But still, like, his eye shape, yeah, he looks smart. He probably is too.
William Osler's textbook, and it's that big. I have it at my family's home in America. It is so detailed. There are so many maladies and pathologies of the heart, all these different ways that people can die, and then look and what happened. Oh, and this is what happened. This is not a single damn mention of any coronary thrombi in the coronary vessels. Um, why is that? It's just too stupid
Yeah, because people didn't eat engine oil.
to figure it out. And these guys dissecting everything else about the heart, looking at all these different sorts of things, and they just totally missed that. Just totally missed this big blockage that killed off half the heart and it's scarred over. Really? I mean, you have to be a special kind of stupid or ignorant to believe that. It's wrong. It's dead wrong. So why is it? Why is it that the first heart attack, proven on autopsy was in 1912 in America? 10 years later, there were many more. 10 years after that, number one killer in America. Now it's the number one killer worldwide. And there were 8 in all of Europe throughout the entire century of the 1800s. Why is that? Is it really because of cholesterol? Is it really because of meat? We're eating more meat in the 1800s than we were in the 1930s when this was the number one killer in America, or became the number one killer in America. We're eating more meat in 1912 than we were in 1930 when this became the number one killer in America. It was a U-shaped curve. So we're eating less and less and less throughout the 1800s. It dips. It's at its trough in the 1920s and 30s when this becomes the number one killer, and then it starts slowly coming back up. So there isn't even a correlation. So sorry I belabored that point, but it still really riles me up, obviously. But watch my video, The Truth About Cholesterol and Heart Disease. This has just killed billions of people. I mean, do we get that?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It, those people should just be, you know what,
Do people understand that? Like this has been
exterminated, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
responsible for the death and disease of billions of people around the world over the past century. Billions, right? So almost everyone on earth is affected by this, by these terrible recommendations, these outright frauds and lies from these drug pushing assholes. And people have gotten sick, they've gotten overweight, they've died early, they've died in disease and suffering. And in
Yes, it's not just dying early. Like people say, oh, I can't eat only meat. I'd rather have a better, good life than a long, boring life. What they don't understand is, first of all, you're not gonna have any satisfaction of life if you eat shit food. Second of all, you're gonna suffer. You're gonna suffer. You're gonna die slowly. You're not just gonna die early. You're gonna die slowly.
in having dementia and Alzheimer's and being enfeebled both mentally and physically by the billions. You have 35-year-old men and women having heart attacks and dropping dead in front of their children. They're robbed of their entire life with their kids. Those kids are robbed from their parents for the rest of their
It's it's just really rough to think about that stuff.
life because these assholes, just wanted to make a buck. That pisses me off, and everyone should be pissed off by this. Which, oh well, it doesn't. No, bullshit. F you for ever putting this up. F you for trying to push this nonsense on people. F you for trying to keep propagating this bullshit when we have hard evidence it was a con in the first place. So people like Dr.
Yeah, this guy is really good.
And these other assholes who just push this sort of shit, probably because they're getting paid off. They just want to try to make a name for themselves because they're just desperate to try to be popular. Like, I'm sorry you didn't have friends in school, but Jesus Christ, don't take it out on the rest of us. Like, no one is benefiting by the nonsense that these people say. People are getting hurt and they are suffering and they are dying by the billions because of this garbage that people have been spewing out there, and it is just time that this just dies, and we just stop doing that and just be like, oh, but cholesterol is like f off. That was a scam. Not talking about it. And I think that's what I'm going to start doing is just be like, look, watch my video on it. It's a scam. Don't worry about it because it's a scam. It is a scam, and we just
Yes, exactly.
you know the only reason that this is still alive is because we are keeping it alive by even entertaining the discussion. So, oh, but you have to do this. That's bullshit. You're wrong. We're not talking about that. Read a goddamn book. This was just, this was, they made it up. They made it up to push their product and to protect their product. It's crap. Moving on with our lives. And that's what we should do. And the animals don't like it.
So this guy, from what I know, he doesn't eat raw meat or that much organ meat. I don't think he eats organ meat. I think he just eats like eggs and steak, and he cooks with butter. I think that's all he eats. He doesn't eat fruit either. I saw his video on fruit. I mean, I would say he's kind of right about fruit. Um, Of course, in nature you wouldn't have it year round. You would only have fruit for a week or two. And fruits in nature would be much different, much less sugar, much more vitamin C. Of course, also fruit in grocery stores they're picked when they're ripe, when they're unripe. They put them on the shelves and they ripen on the shelves, and when that happens they don't fully clear the defense chemicals that they had when they're ripe, when they're unripe. Ugh, whatever. I mean, it's a fair point. Like, I'm not saying fruit is perfect, but I don't think it's that bad. I really don't think fruit is that bad for you.